Hi everyone, I'm Randy MacLean, the President of WayPoint Analytics. I'm here today with Bruce Merrifield, my partner and long-time collaborator in distribution profitability. And what we wanted to talk about is the things that you would do first, in your first recognitions of what you do with WayPoint when you get it running. And so we're going to talk in the next little while about the wholesale distribution math. We're going to talk about why it's a win-win scenario and it's safe to get going. We're going to talk about getting some early traction, some early positive results, and how to make sure that the organization has the right information support infused so that you can be successful with it. And so this is just a part of a series of videos that we're doing to help people understand how to get good traction, how to get a lot of mileage out of the information they can get and what to do with it. And so we're very pleased to have nice to see you, Bruce. Welcome. Thanks for coming all the way out from Miami to help us with these things. Listen, the first thing that I think is important is for people to understand the real mathematics of wholesale distribution. And that may sound a little bit, trivial, but we've been so focused on gross margin percentage for such a long time that it's kind of the core of what we think about. And yet that's not the best number to use in order to run the business. And in fact, it leads people astray and gets them into the wrong areas.
Right.
And so the first thing I'm always talking to people about is, there's really three numbers that you're interested in running the business. The first is gross profit dollars. And the reason why is that's your operating budget for the company. That's how much money you have after you've paid for the product. And your operating expenses have to come out of that gross profit number, so naturally that's how much you have if you want to be profitable and make a return to the shareholders. The second number is the cost to serve number, or your operating expense number. That's how much you spend on your operations, getting all the product through your system and into the hands of the customers. And where the gross profit dollars are driven by volume and pricing or margins, which we're pretty good at in this business, the cost to serve is largely driven by transaction counts. The more shipments and deliveries you have, the more orders you process, the more invoices you write, the more picks you have for a given amount of revenue, the higher your expense rate is going to be, and the less likely it is for you to be able to be a super performer. So,
right.
and then the third number is the NBC, which is a really critical measure, because what it is gross profit less cost to serve,
sure.
And it combines the results of both numbers. So most companies are really good at looking at gross margins, but
right.
They haven't really thought of how to keep gross profit and cost to serve in balance in that NBC number. So,
well, I think one report in WayPoint that shocks a lot of people. I mean, obviously, whale curves. People just go, I can't believe we have 1% of the customers destroying 20% of our peak internal profits. But there's a customer metric report. You have to, and in it you can see the margin as a percent of sales. You can see the margin percent, and you can see the cost to serve
as a percentage.
Yeah, and you go to the top 20 most profitable customers, there is no pattern at all. You could have customers that only have 7.5% margin, but of course their cost to serve is 3%.
Right.
So the NBC spread is a healthy 4% or something.
Yeah.
You have guys with 39% margin. I think that's impossible, but the cost to serve might be 32%, but you still got 7% spread.
Right.
You go to the bottom report, and you see all the same margin percents. But the only difference is all the cost to serves are 5, 6, 8 percentage points higher than the margins. You're losing on those guys.
Right.
But those are all symptoms. And with your deep dive tools, you can sort of dig deeper and say, well, why is this cost to serve so high? And you can get down to looking at why are they buying $1 items on a just-in-time basis 100 times a year, and then having emergency rush orders on them too. And you start to realize, wow, there's some dysfunction going on here that's killing both parties.
Yeah, and people come to this, come to the point where they've been logically because they've never really had the tools to find out where the costs really lie.
Sure.
So we tend to, we've always been working on this monolithic model that says, the cost of every customer is the same. It's only the margins that change, and really the opposite is true. It's the cost rate on a customer that is predictive of whether you're going to make or lose money on the customer. It has nothing to do with margin at all.
Everybody out there in Viewerland, I want you to make note of this and say, what was your unspoken assumption about cost to serve as a % of the sales dollar for each one of your customers? And everybody will say, I never thought about it.
Or
now that I think about it, I guess I was assuming that if my margin, my whole business, 25%, my operating cost is 23 or 2.
it was the same for everybody.
They assume 22% for everybody, and that's all over the board.
Well, and it's actually just, if you think about it for a minute, your margins aren't the same on all your customers. How on earth could your cost be the same?
Right.
And, there's, so.
But financial reporting, which you need to pay your taxes and borrow money from the bank, that's like 1/4 of the really bigger picture. And if you don't measure, it doesn't exist. But now we're measuring things that not only did we never see, but our customers in many cases never saw.
Well, and one thing about that is that tends to be the thing that we see causing the most frustration in the ability to get something done in the company. We're so tied to what the financial statements are saying that we're not really willing to believe or use something that gives us more detail. And so I've seen too many projects that get stalled where they're saying, no, that, yes, we bought this great tool that gives us all this extra detail, and now we can really see what's going on. But since it doesn't match the thing we've always used, then there must be something wrong. And it's a little bit illogical, because if it matched what you already, if it was only telling you what you already knew,
right,
you wouldn't need it. And it actually does a very different job. And so the numbers are supposed to be different, because you're supposed to, the first time, be able to get more of those cost detail numbers.
Right, right.
So now the interesting thing is, you've been, you're a master tactician in how to, go and make a company more profitable, how to increase incrementally, 14, 15, 20, 30 different functions within the company, and those things all add up to stellar performances. And what I find is that if you have all those different things going on, they'll add up to a lot of basically much better bottom line, get you into that second tier where the companies are making 3 or 4 times the normal profit rate within the industry. And what's interesting is, when I look through the tactics that you recommend, every single one of them is basically no risk or very low risk, because when you look at them, you're always trying to do, they'll always have one of 2 results, or a combination of them. They will either get the gross profit on the deals up,
right,
or they'll cram the transaction counts or the costs down,
right,
making a wider spread.
Sure.
And so even if I didn't have any numbers at all,
right,
and started using them,
right,
then the company profitability would show up in the financial statements eventually, because the differences in my practices and my cost structures.
right.
And so that always gives me a lot of comfort, when I say, hey, just take this and get going.
Right.
Everything that you're doing is something that is has a track record of causing an improvement. And whether you think you're starting here and you're moving up, but really you're starting here and you're moving up, you're still moving it up. So it's pretty safe practice.
Yeah, I think if we think of a company as an organism, just like our body, if we're going to do something with our body, so in sports, if you're going to hit a golf ball and you move your head, it's big and it's heavy and it's going to affect your whole stroke. So if you just keep your head still and you focus on the ball, a lot of other things sort of fall in line. Well, the organizing theme for most distributors today is a customer-centric solution. If you have exclusive products and you make a lot of money on, you're a Caterpillar equipment dealer or somebody like that, then you do what the big guy tells you to, and the deal is you get rich. So you just do that. And a lot of it may be, you may think it's
kind
dysfunctional.
of the McDonald's type theory.
Exactly,
where they
or inefficient. But if you're selling a bunch of commodities, so the customer really has the power to say, well, all right, let's do a low-risk, customer-centric thing. The beauty of WayPoint is you don't say to the whole sales force, here are all your territories in a new light, showing that half of you have got unprofitable territories, and half of you most of you got lots of losing accounts on which we're paying you commissions. They're just going to freak out. But if you looked overall at the bottom biggest losers and said, gee, who's the nicest, most friendly, progressive guy that I could call up and say, can we just have a conversation? Hey, I really want to try a cheap experiment here. I want to come out and show you the math that I have for our buy-sell process. It's like looking with X-ray vision or MRI. We can sort of see, and we know, actually, we're losing a lot. We think you are too. So I want to broaden the conversation from product for price, not that we're not going to always talk about that, but let's look at this other stuff too. There's no bad guy here, it just kind of grew up the way it grew up.
Yeah.
And you go out and you sort of say, were you aware that, you had all these guys coming to my counter buying $1 things when they could have been out billing $70 an hour as a tech, whatever they are. We had all these rush orders systematically every week, in your factory, and somebody's sitting there sucking their thumb for lack of having this one little deal. That's got to be really expensive, don't you think? And of course, if I'm talking to a honcho, who can see the big picture, they go, gosh, you're right. And I've been in cases where we go out and we find the guy, and he goes, well, this is just the way it was always done. I always thought it was pretty stupid myself, But you can see exactly, they're sort of frustrated, like, dude, why don't you, but they're just doing what they're doing. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, that's not new news. It's not like we're all inventing the brand new way of doing things. Walmart's been doing this for a couple of decades. Toyota, General Motors. They've been working with their vendors in such a way that they squeeze the cost of doing business with each other out where it's not necessary.
Exactly. I remember when we were talking about evil Walmart, and back in 1995 to 2000, they accounted for like 20% of all the productivity in the United States. But at the same time, there's a survey done of Walmart suppliers. And they said, well, totally honest, I will admit that nobody gets a lower price than Walmart. On the other hand, they're my most profitable account and they're my fastest growing account. Because although the price is low, the cost to serve went down even more than the price, so I'm still making good money. And these guys grow the equivalent of a discount chain every year, and they're putting the other discount chains out of business. So why would you want to sell the other guys?
Yeah, and in fact, and that just comes back to the math. Basically, the transaction counts are lower, taking the cost down lower, and there's room for margin to move and still leave profits.
Yeah.
So that's what they like to do.
Well, back to my little story where, you make a couple little fixes, and now what happens is instead of $1 per pick, you're getting $30 per pick on one item. So instead of 100 picks, you've got 3 picks a year. What happens is the margin dollar per unit of activity cost, going to pick something or stopping a truck, goes up.
Right.
So the cost to serve, the unit activity sort of stays the same, but the payload's 20–30% higher.
Right.
So it seems like value or margin dollars going up and cost of service going down for the spread, but they're related. And then what happened in this case, the guy got so excited, he gave us 20% more business. Which was, and so we're getting rid of 20% of our transactional activity, and a lot of distributors go, some of my people will be sitting around. I need to keep them busy. I need to keep them busy losing money.
Oh, no, because they got a million things they've always wanted to do and nobody's ever had time for it.
Yeah.
There's lots of things.
So in that case, what happened was the busyness dropped by 20%, and then they gave them 20% more volume, so it was a wash. So same people doing the same thing, but now the margin dollar per warm body went through the roof.
Now, that brings you to sort of the law of reciprocal costs in the fact that for everything that you pick, pack, and ship, they have to have somebody that receives and does the three-way match.
Yeah,
for every order you process, they have to pay somebody to make the order.
And the general thing, if you think of channels, are basically think of product flowing through, and there are all these little people that are busy keeping the product flowing through. People got to buy it, they got to receive it, they got to put it away, they got to pick it, they got to ship it, they got to consume it at the customer level. And so if you look at every single one of your activities and say, how is that cost mirrored more or less? It's like a shadow thing. It's like, more or less. So if we have an emergency order, they've got downtime. What's the cost of the downtime?
Right.
If we have a $1 event and we've got $40 worth of three-way paperwork match back in the back office for trade credit purposes and so forth, they've got the paperwork thing also. So if we're talking on the phone, they have somebody talking on the phone. So yes, and a lot of times if I go to a buyer, they don't care. They're in their silo. They do what they do. They get a measured price.
Just trying to get the lowest price.
Exactly. And if you say, "Hey, Mr. Buyer, I can liquidate all your paperwork costs, your expert," they're going, "And my job? I don't have an interest in that." So one, it's not a metric, and two, it's job. So you have to get to a higher level person, which is a honcho involvement.
Right.
But then you've got to follow up and put in a new order things and maintain and continuously improve it, which is what the sales guy needs to do.
Yeah, and we have some of our other videos, we talk about the specifics of that. I guess the main takeaway then is that you should get going because of the law of reciprocal costs. Everything you do that reduces the transaction counts not only increases your own productivity and profitability, it also increases the customer. So it's a win-win all the time.
Right.
There's never a scenario where you go to the customer and say, "Hey, we want you to make less money so that we can make more." And so that makes it sustainable across time.
Right.
So if you're managing the math of wholesale distribution, by monitoring and managing the gross profit production through volume and pricing. You're managing the transaction counts down, so you're controlling and reducing your cost to serve on a per unit basis. And it's beneficial for the customer as well as yourself.
Right.
Then it doesn't really matter whether you're starting from here or starting from there. And by the way, I've run into, I can't tell you how many people that have been following your advice going back from way back before WayPoint was around.
Right.
And they didn't have any actual numbers. They were just doing back of the napkin stuff, but following these tactics.
Yeah, yeah.
And these guys run very, very outperforming profitable companies by just using the tactics. So it doesn't really matter whether they got the numbers down or don't have the numbers at all. If they're doing these kinds of things, then it makes a difference to their to the profit production of their company.
You know, and I add one more thing, which is that the power users in our WayPoint thing, the C-suite, they seems to be able to sort of like swallow their pride. They say, well, wait a minute, these numbers reveal that we've been historically doing dumb things. No, they're not dumb things, they were smart things. Everybody else in the industry was doing it, and you were doing it hard, and you were doing it the best you could with the numbers you had. So they're able to forgive themselves for, quote, past sins.
Yeah.
They're able to say, well, wait a minute, this is new stuff I've never done before, but you know what, that's okay. I'll go from being Mr. Expert to sort of lead learner. I'll go out and I'll call on some initial account myself.
Well, the thing about that really is if you think about it, if you have a guy that comes into a brand new operation, he hasn't been there before, and if he's smart, he's walking around saying, why do we do this? And it isn't sort of, we shouldn't be doing this, it's just sort of, can we explain what the purpose of this particular process or function is,
right.
And does it make sense for what's going on today?
Yeah.
And so companies get big improvements when they have fresh blood come in, and basically just go around and do a spot check or just check on things to make sure that they still make sense and they're not just repeating something that was built in the 50s and everybody's just trained their replacement for the last 3 generations.
Right.
And so I find that we do have a different class of leadership in the most successful organizations, and those are guys that actually have the ability to go back and question things. And they're never willing to accept an answer that says, I don't know, we've just always done it.
Right.
They're always doing a cross-check or a periodic check to make sure that it still makes sense.
Right.
And that really is one of the differences I find in the leadership between companies that really can transcend their industry and people that are basically just copying what's always been done, or trying to, as they say in the news, the generals are fighting the last war.
Right.
And if you look at the average businesses or in the below average businesses, you always find a leadership team that is basically following a model from a generation ago.
Right.
And so.
And I'll just a quick judo trick, which is that our most successful operators know they're going to run into a wall of resistance. Whatever you say, people will say, oh, that can't work because, and they're going to come with some nitpicky thing. Well, even if the nitpick is right, in the balance scale, it's not a deal breaker. And so they're saying, look, it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's good enough and a whole magnitude more effective. Let's go.
Yeah.
And to basically say to everybody, look, nitpick this new approach all you want, but you have to come up with other innovative ideas to move forward. In other words, I'm not going to let you nitpick so we can just default back to what we're doing. Defending the status quo is not an option. Because everybody wants a raise. And, we've got to come up with ways to improve the value and lower the cost of service.
That's got to be one of the most important points, because in 100% of the cases, there are people there that will prefer to leave things the way they are.
Oh, yeah.
And it's logical. Self-selecting group, they wouldn't be there if they weren't happy with things the way that they operate.
It's a cognitive biases. It's part of the human scene. It helped us evolve and survive for 3.5 million years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it didn't help us evolve very much, but
Right.
So.
Survive.
Yeah, so exactly, and survival isn't enough anymore. In fact, if your aim is to survive and you fall short of that, the alternative is not useful. Right. Okay, anyway, thank you for spending some time talking about those kinds of conceptual things, and we have a lot more in our video series for you to learn from and to implement, and some more of the specifics that you can use in these areas that can help you have a high-performing or a super-performing business. So Take some time, look at the rest of the videos, take what you're hearing today, put it into action so that you can actually take your business a step up, or 3 or 4 or 10 steps up as you go into the future. So thanks, we'll see you in the next video.
Hi, Bruce Merrifield again. If you found this video helpful, then we have more to share with you. And the way you can do that is to head over to the APIC conference. So it's apicconference2cs.com/profit and sign up for our Innovative Profit Tips series. It's a good collection of materials, all designed to show you how to drive more revenue in the distribution sector without having to increase your sales, although they may go up. Or you can simply text your name and email address to, here's the number, write it down, 480-207-3433, and we'll get you started right away.